The city of Varan Prime was alive with noise, greed, and the cold hum of machines. 1,000 worlds had poured their sins into this place, and it showed. Every corner of the spaceport bazaar was filled with flashing lights, strange smells, and voices speaking in 100 tongues. Traders shouted, buyers argued, and guards watched with lifeless eyes. Jack walked through it all like a ghost. His boots echoed on the metal floor, his face hidden under a worn flight jacket. He didn't belong here. Humans rarely came to this side of the galaxy anymore. Not since the war. But Jack came anyway. Maybe to remind himself that some parts of the universe never changed. Maybe to feel something again. He moved past stalls selling alien spices, broken tech, and strange pets locked in cages. But then he froze. His eyes caught something that made his stomach twist. 2 small figures sat behind rusty bars. They were not animals. They were children, alien girls maybe 10 years old, huddled together on a cold floor. Their skin was pale like silver dust, and their hair shimmered faintly in the light. They had wide violet eyes that looked too innocent for this place. One held the other close, whispering softly as if trying to keep her sister calm. Jack's chest tightened. He had seen suffering before, plenty of it. But something about these two felt different. Maybe it was how young they were. Maybe it was how hopeless they looked. Or maybe it was how one of them looked up and met his eyes, and didn't look away. Behind the cage, a thick-bodied merchant leaned against a post, grinning with yellow teeth. "Beautiful, aren't they?" he said in broken trade common. "Valari twins. Very rare, very valuable." Jack's jaw clenched. "What are they doing here?" The merchant chuckled. "For sale, of course. Pleasure buyers pay good money for pure ones. Twins double the price." Jack felt the words hit him like a punch. His fists tightened. He wanted to say something, to shout, to hit the man, but he knew it wouldn't matter. This was legal here. In places like Varan, everything had a price. Even children. The merchant looked him up and down. "You human, yes? Not many come here. Maybe you want to buy? For company? For business? For pleasure?" Jack's voice was low and cold. "They're kids." The merchant shrugged, bored. "That's why they're expensive." Jack turned his gaze back to the girls. One of them, he couldn't tell which was older, was trembling. The other held her tightly, whispering again. Their eyes were full of fear, confusion, and a strange kind of silent pleading. Something inside Jack cracked open. He'd told himself long ago that he was done getting involved. The war had taken everything. His family, his friends, his faith in people. He'd seen enough death to last a lifetime. He was supposed to just haul cargo, stay quiet, and survive. But now, looking at these 2 fragile lives trapped in a cage, all that resolve began to crumble. He stepped closer to the bars. "How much?" he asked. The merchant grinned wide. 50,000 credits. "For both," Jack blinked. "That's insane. Rare blood," the merchant said proudly. "Valari are beautiful, young, and hard to find. Pleasure buyers from the core worlds pay double that. I sell cheap today." Jack looked at the girls again. 50,000 credits. That was everything he had. His ship, his savings, his fuel, his freedom, all gone. He told himself to walk away. He told himself this wasn't his fight, but then one of the twins reached out, her small hand sliding through the gap in the bars. She didn't say a word, just looked up at him with eyes full of tears and trust she shouldn't have had. And Jack knew. He couldn't walk away. Not this time. Not again. He turned back to the merchant, voice steady but hard. "I'll take them." The merchant blinked. "You serious?" Jack nodded slowly. "I'm serious." As the merchant processed the payment, Jack felt his heart racing. His hands trembled when the transaction beeped green. The cage door clicked open with a metallic sigh. The girls didn't move at first. They didn't believe it. But when Jack knelt down and said softly, "You're free now," one of them took a hesitant step forward. He reached out his hand. She touched it like it might vanish. Then her sister followed, holding her hand tightly. Jack stood, his throat tight. "You're safe. I promise." The merchant counted his credits behind them, laughing. "You humans," he muttered, "always buying trouble." Maybe he was right. But as Jack led the girls away from that cage and into the crowded streets, he didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt human again. Jack's heart raced as he led the twin girls through the crowded alleys of Varan Prime. Every shadow felt alive. Every whisper made him glance over his shoulder. He knew the merchant would not let them go so easily. Slavers rarely forgave, and Jack didn't have a ship fast enough to outrun trouble forever. The girls clung to each other. Their hands were small, trembling in his larger ones. Neither spoke, but their wide violet eyes followed every step he took. Jack wished he could tell them everything would be fine. He wanted to lie and make them believe it. But in his gut, he knew this was just the beginning. He had nothing left after paying 50,000 credits. That sum was every scrap of money he had. His ship, his fuel, his savings, even what he had meant to use to fix the Rustbird's old engines. Yet somehow, seeing those frightened faces, Jack didn't regret it. Not for a second. He ducked into a dark side street, hoping to lose the eyes that might be following. The girls whispered to each other in soft alien words he didn't understand. One of them, Lyra, glanced at him with a hesitant question in her eyes. Jack offered a small, reassuring smile, even though he felt the tension coiling in his chest. "They're scared," he said quietly, almost to himself, "and I don't blame them." Finally, they reached the Rustbird. The old freighter looked worse than ever. Rust streaks running down the hull, a patchwork of repairs, and the engines that sounded like they were held together with hope and duct tape. But it was home for now. Jack knelt at the loading ramp and gestured for the girls to step in. "Come on," he said softly. "It's safe inside." The twins hesitated. Then slowly they climbed the ramp together, hands tightly clasped. Once inside, Jack locked the cargo bay door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. He could hear their quiet, relieved sighs, but relief was fleeting. A red warning light blinked on the dashboard, a proximity alert. Jack's stomach dropped. Slaver ships were already scanning the area, looking for their lost property. He cursed under his breath. "We need to go now," he said, his voice firm but calm. The girls didn't understand all the words, but they knew danger when they saw it. They moved quickly, following his instructions. The Rustbird's engines roared as Jack powered them up. The girls held onto the handrails, eyes wide as the ship shuddered. Smoke and sparks leaked from the old conduits, but Jack ignored them. They had to survive. That was all that mattered. Outside, the spaceport lights blurred into streaks. Behind them, alarms screamed in distant slaver ships. Jack twisted the controls, weaving the Rustbird between towers, past landing pads and under low-hanging transport cranes. Every turn, every evasive move, brought him closer to freedom, but also closer to danger. One plasma shot missed the hull by inches, sending sparks flying. Jack's teeth gritted, his palms sweating. He pushed the engines beyond their limits, feeling the old freighter shudder like a wounded animal. "Hold on!" he shouted. The girls pressed themselves to the walls, faces pale but trusting. Minutes passed like hours. The Rustbird weaved through storms of light and metal. Finally, Jack spotted the outer ring of the planet's atmosphere. If he could break through, the slavers would have to chase him across space, and he might have a chance to lose them. The girls whispered, trembling but clinging to each other. "We're safe, right?" Lyra asked. Jack gave a short, tired laugh, trying to hide his fear. "Not yet," he admitted. "But we will be." Then came the moment of truth. Jack pushed the Rustbird into a narrow canyon that led to the upper atmosphere. Plasma blasts scorched the rocks around them. Sparks flew across the cockpit window. But Jack didn't flinch. He had done worse in the war. He had survived worse, and he would survive this for them. The Rustbird shot into the clouds, engines screaming, leaving the slavers behind in a burst of fire and smoke. Silence returned, except for the soft breathing of the twins and the steady hum of the engines. Jack leaned back, finally letting himself exhale. The girls stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Lyra whispered, almost too softly to hear, "You saved us." Jack smiled, feeling a lump in his throat. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I did, and I'll keep doing it. I promise." For the first time in a long while, the human pilot felt like he mattered, not as a soldier, not as a survivor, but as someone who could make a difference. And as the Rustbird vanished into the dark space beyond Varan Prime, Jack knew one thing for sure. He would never let anyone harm these two girls again. Not while he still had breath in his body. The Rustbird floated silently in the empty darkness of space, its engines humming softly like a heartbeat. For the first time since leaving the brutal bazaar, the twins, Lyra and Nira, were still. They sat together on the cargo floor, hands intertwined, staring at the stars streaming past the viewing window. Jack watched them from the cockpit, his chest tight with a mix of relief and worry. He had gotten them out of immediate danger, but the galaxy was still a dangerous place. Slavers were patient. They didn't give up easily, and Jack knew that if he let his guard down, these girls might never get another chance at freedom. "Do you understand me?" he asked gently, stepping down from the cockpit. The girls flinched at his voice. Their eyes were wide, reflecting both curiosity and fear. Lyra shook her head slowly. Nira clutched her sister's arm, whispering something that sounded like a question. Jack knelt so he was level with them, keeping his hands visible. "I know you don't understand my words yet," he said softly, "but I want you to know this. I will not let anything happen to you. Not here, not ever. Do you understand?" They stared at him silently. Then Nira, the quieter of the two, nodded faintly. Lyra's eyes lingered on his, searching, still unsure. Jack reached out his hand slowly. "Trust me," he said. After a tense moment, Lyra placed her small hand in his. Nira followed. Jack felt a shiver run through him. That small gesture, that tiny connection, was worth more than any credit or cargo he had ever transported. Over the next few days, Jack made it his mission to teach the girls the simplest things about life on a ship. He showed them how to sit safely in the cockpit, how to keep their balance when the Rustbird lurched, and how to eat without choking on recycled rations. Every lesson was met with hesitation, but also curiosity. Slowly, he saw sparks of life returning to them. One evening, Jack found them huddled together in a corner of the cargo bay. Lyra held a small drawing, a crude sketch of 3 figures holding hands. He crouched beside them, studying the image. "Is this us?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded, a shy smile breaking through her fear. Nira added her own mark, scribbling a tiny star above the figures. Jack felt his throat tighten. "Family," he whispered. The word felt foreign, almost dangerous, yet comforting. He had not been called that in so long. At night, he slept lightly in the cockpit while the twins curled up together on the floor below. Every creak of the Rustbird made them startle. Every alarm spike made Jack tense. But as he watched them sleep, he realized something he hadn't felt in years: hope. They weren't broken, not entirely. They were survivors, and he had been given the honor of keeping them alive. Jack taught them the basics of his language, repeating words slowly, pointing to objects and using gestures. Lyra caught on quickly, forming short sentences that made Jack laugh quietly. Nira was quieter, but her progress was steady. By the end of the week, they could say simple phrases like safe, food, and Jack. The twins also taught him things. Their alien gestures, small stories about their homeworld, their songs that sounded like wind over crystal towers. Jack listened in awe. They were teaching him that life was bigger than survival, that love and trust could exist even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. But the shadow of danger never left. Jack scanned the Rustbird sensors constantly, checking for pursuing ships. Every ping of a distant signal made him tighten his grip on the controls. "I won't let them take you," he whispered to the twins one night. "I swear it." Lyra and Nira looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. For the first time, Jack realized that he wasn't just saving their lives. He was building a bridge between worlds, between human and Valari, between fear and hope. As the Rustbird drifted further into the void, Jack sat back in the cockpit and let the girls' small voices echo through the ship. Laughter, quiet but real, filled the Rustbird for the first time in years. And in that moment, Jack understood something he had forgotten long ago. Sometimes being human meant more than surviving. Sometimes it meant protecting the innocent no matter the cost and teaching them to believe again. The galaxy was vast, cruel, and dangerous. But as long as he had breath in his body, Jack would be the guardian of these 2 small lights shining in the darkness. The Rustbird sailed silently through the empty reaches of space, stars stretching endlessly in every direction. For a brief moment, Jack allowed himself to think that maybe, just maybe, they were safe. The twins, Lyra and Nira, sat huddled on the cargo floor, leaning against each other and whispering softly in their alien tongue. Jack smiled, trying to push the gnawing worry out of his chest. But silence in space rarely meant safety. A sudden alarm shrieked through the Rustbird, red lights flashing across the cockpit. Jack's heart jumped into his throat. He lunged for the control panel, eyes scanning the sensors. 2 ships, fast, sleek, and unmistakable, were trailing them. Slaver marks glowed on the tracking screens. They had found them. Jack's stomach sank. The twins stiffened beside him, sensing the tension, their violet eyes wide with fear. He knelt quickly, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You stay here, quiet, do not make a sound." "Understand?" Lyra nodded quickly, clutching Nira's hand. Nira's lips trembled, but she stayed silent. Jack pressed a small finger to his lips, his own heart pounding. He turned back to the cockpit. The Rustbird was old, not designed for combat, but Jack had flown through worse. He tightened his grip on the controls and muttered to himself, "They won't take you. Not today. Not ever." The first slaver ship fired, plasma bolts arcing dangerously close to the Rustbird's hull. Sparks flew across the cockpit window, and the freighter jolted violently. Jack's teeth clenched. He twisted the controls, dodging the next volley, weaving through a dense asteroid field. Every rock and debris he passed was a gamble. One wrong move, and the Rustbird and the girls would be shattered. "Hold on," he shouted over the roar of engines and alarms. The twins pressed themselves against the floor, silent and trembling. Jack could see the slaver pilots on the view screen. Their faces were cruel, expressionless behind their helmets. They were hunting, not negotiating. Their mission was simple: retrieve their property or destroy anything in their path. Jack knew he had to think fast. The Rustbird's weapons were weak, its shields fragile. Direct combat would be suicide. Instead, he aimed for the nearby debris field, a dangerous shortcut that could either hide them or tear the ship apart. "Just a little longer," he muttered under his breath, eyes focused on the path ahead. "We'll make it." As the Rustbird darted between floating wrecks and spinning satellites, plasma fire slammed into nearby asteroids, sending showers of sparks into space. The girls gasped, but Jack kept his voice calm even as adrenaline coursed through his veins. "You see that?" he asked, pointing at a large, tumbling hull. "We can hide in there. Stay low, stay quiet." The twins nodded, following his every move. Jack's heart ached seeing their fear, but he knew showing panic would only make it worse. He had to be strong. He had to be their shield. Finally, after tense minutes that felt like hours, the Rustbird slipped behind the massive derelict, disappearing from the slaver's sensors. The red blips faded. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the engines and the soft, shaky breathing of the twins. Jack leaned back, exhaustion hitting him like a wave. He rubbed his face, feeling the weight of what he had just done. He had saved them again, but barely. Lyra reached up and touched his arm, her small fingers trembling. "Jack, did we—" He smiled wearily, pulling them close. "Yes," he said softly. "You're safe, for now. But we have to keep moving. They'll come back." Nira buried her face against his jacket, trembling, and whispered, "We trust you." Jack's chest tightened. That simple phrase, spoken by two fragile girls who had every reason to fear humans, hit him harder than any weapon ever could. He promised himself then, silently but firmly, that he would never let them down. Not again. As the Rustbird drifted through the dark void, Jack looked at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there were safe worlds, friends who could help, and a chance for the twins to truly be free. He just had to survive long enough to get them there. And for the first time in a long while, Jack realized that fear, while strong, was no match for determination. And he would fight the galaxy, fight the slavers, fight anyone who dared harm these two children, because they were more than cargo. They were family. The Rustbird drifted through a quiet sector of space, but Jack knew better than to trust silence. Slavers were patient hunters. They would follow, they would wait, and they would strike at the perfect moment. The girls sensed the tension, their small bodies curled together on the cargo floor, eyes wide and silent. Jack's chest ached at the sight, but he couldn't let fear show. He studied the ship's sensors again. The pursuing vessels were still behind, closing in slowly but steadily. Jack's mind raced. The Rustbird could not outgun them. Their speed and firepower were far superior. He had to think differently. He had to risk everything. "Lyra, Nira," he said softly, kneeling beside them. The twins flinched at his voice but stayed quiet. "We're going to do something risky, something dangerous. But it's the only way to get you to safety." They looked up at him, eyes wide. Lyra gripped Nira's hand tightly. Jack took a deep breath. "You have to trust me. No matter what happens, I will find a way to keep you safe." The Rustbird's engines roared to life as he made a sudden turn toward a nearby asteroid belt, a dangerous shortcut that no slaver would expect him to take. The twins pressed themselves to the floor, their bodies trembling. But Jack kept his voice calm, guiding them through the chaos. "Hold tight. Don't look out the windows," he shouted as plasma blasts lit up the void around them. The Rustbird shuddered violently as one bolt grazed the hull. Sparks flew and the ship groaned, but Jack refused to slow down. The girl's safety was all that mattered. Lyra whispered, "Jack, are we going to die?" Her small voice broke through the roar of engines and alarms. Jack's heart clenched. He knelt beside her, putting a hand gently on her shoulder. "No," he said firmly, though inside he knew nothing was guaranteed. "We're not going to die. I promise. We're going to make it. Trust me." For the next tense hour, Jack maneuvered the Rustbird through narrow gaps between asteroids, dodging plasma fire and debris alike. The girls stayed silent, clinging to each other, learning in their own way that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward in spite of it. Suddenly, a slaver ship cut off their path. Jack's eyes narrowed. He had no choice. He pushed the Rustbird's engines beyond safe limits, spiraling into a narrow tunnel between two massive asteroids. The ship shook violently. Alarms screamed. Sparks rained from the damaged conduits. The twins screamed, holding each other tighter. Jack shouted over the chaos, "Almost there. Almost safe." A final burst of plasma from the pursuing ship hit the Rustbird's rear. The hull buckled. Fire spread across the cargo bay. Jack felt the heat, the burn, and the hum of failing systems. Yet he pushed on, ignoring the pain and the fear. Finally, they emerged from the tunnel. The asteroid belt stretched before them, a maze no slaver could navigate easily. Jack slowed the Rustbird slightly, scanning for the girl's safety. Lyra and Nira were pale but intact, gripping each other, eyes wide but shining with trust. Jack sank into the cockpit seat, exhaustion and relief washing over him. He glanced at the twins. "You see? We made it." Lyra's voice was barely audible. "You saved us." Again, Jack's throat tightened. "I'll keep saving you," he said quietly, "no matter what it costs me." He didn't tell them the truth, that the Rustbird might not survive another fight, that he had risked everything he owned, every credit, every resource, and maybe even his life to save them. He didn't need to. They already understood the lesson. Sometimes being human meant giving everything for those who couldn't protect themselves. The Rustbird limped forward, engines smoking but alive. Jack allowed himself a small smile. For now, the girls were safe. They had survived another day in a galaxy that wanted to see them as nothing more than property. Jack looked out into the stars, silently promising himself that no one, not slaver, not mercenary, not cruel fate, would ever take these girls from him. He would fight, he would sacrifice, he would endure, because they were not just passengers on his ship. They were family, and some things in the galaxy were worth every risk, every danger, and every drop of courage one could muster. For Lyra and Nira, Jack would be that thing. The Rustbird floated through the dark void, its hull scarred and smoking from the last encounter. Jack sat in the cockpit, sweat dripping down his face, fingers gripping the controls so tightly his knuckles turned white. He knew the slavers would not give up. They were clever, relentless, and ruthless. Every second of calm felt like a trap. Below, the twins huddled together in the cargo bay, trembling. Lyra's hands gripped Nira's tightly, and Nira's small face was buried against her sister's shoulder. Jack could hear their shallow breathing over the ship's hum. His chest ached. He had promised them safety, but now more than ever he realized how fragile that promise was. "They're going to come for us again," Jack muttered under his breath. "And this time it won't be easy." He studied the sensors. 2 slaver ships had picked up their trail again. This time they were faster, smarter, and more prepared. Jack's mind raced. He could run, but only for so long. Eventually, the Rustbird would fail. There was only one choice left. He had to make a stand. Jack turned to the twins, kneeling so he was level with their eyes. "Listen," he said softly. "We have to take a risk. A big one. You have to trust me no matter what happens. Do you understand?" Lyra and Nira nodded, trembling but silent. Jack reached out and held their hands. "I promise I'll protect you. Always. But you need to be brave too." The twins didn't fully understand the words, but they felt the tone, the steady, unwavering resolve. They clung to him tighter, and Jack felt a flicker of hope. He powered up the Rustbird's engines, pushing them to their absolute limit. Sparks flew, warning lights flashed, and the hull creaked as the ship shuddered violently. Jack navigated a narrow asteroid field that acted as both shield and trap. Plasma blasts streaked past, striking rocks that exploded into fragments, creating a chaotic storm of debris. "Hold on," Jack shouted over the roar of engines and alarms. The girls pressed themselves to the floor, eyes wide, hearts racing. The Rustbird twisted, dipped, and soared through impossible gaps. Jack could feel the heat in the cockpit, the strain in the engines, the fragility of the ship beneath him. One wrong move could shatter them all. Then came the slavers' final move. One of their ships barreled straight at the Rustbird, weapons locked and charged. Jack's stomach dropped. He had seconds to act. He swerved at the last moment, the Rustbird scraping the edge of a massive asteroid. The slaver ship fired, hitting the Rustbird's engine with a fiery explosion. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the cockpit. Jack's vision blurred, but he refused to panic. "Almost there," he yelled, guiding the Rustbird through the chaos with every ounce of skill he had. The twins clung to each other, their small hands trembling, their violet eyes shining with fear and trust. With a final desperate push, Jack sent the Rustbird careening into a narrow canyon between two colossal asteroids. The slaver ship tried to follow, but the path was too tight. It smashed against the rocks, exploding into a shower of sparks and metal fragments. Jack's chest heaved. The Rustbird shuddered violently, engines failing, but they were free. For now. He stumbled to the cargo bay, smoke curling around him. Lyra and Nira rushed forward, their small arms wrapping around him. "Jack, you saved us," Lyra cried, tears streaming down her face. Jack sank to his knees, holding them close. "I'll always save you," he whispered. "No matter what it costs me. I promise." The twins clung to him, shivering but safe. Jack's mind raced. The Rustbird was damaged beyond repair. They could not stay here long. But as he looked at their trusting faces, he felt something stronger than fear. Hope. Courage wasn't about being unafraid. It was about moving forward when the odds were against you. And for Lyra and Nira, he would move forward every single time. He stood, wiping the sweat and soot from his face, and whispered to the stars outside, "I won't let anyone take them. Not ever." The galaxy was cruel. But in the Rustbird's fragile hull, 2 alien girls were alive, and 1 human had given everything to protect them. And sometimes, that was enough. The Rustbird was barely holding together. Smoke curled from the engines, sparks flew from damaged panels, and the ship groaned with every movement. Jack's body ached from hours of steering through asteroid belts, dodging plasma fire and protecting the twins. Yet he refused to stop, refused to slow down. Lyra and Nira were safe, alive, and that was all that mattered. The slavers were relentless. He could feel their pursuit in every ping of the sensors. Another ship was closing in fast, weapons charged, their intent clear: reclaim their property. Jack swallowed hard, knowing the Rustbird would not survive another direct hit. But the girls had to make it. They had to live. "Lyra, Nira," Jack said softly, kneeling beside them in the cargo bay. "I have to do something risky. You have to hide, stay quiet, and trust me. Can you do that?" The twins nodded without hesitation, their small hands clutching each other tightly. Fear was written across their faces, but so was trust. The kind of trust only earned through life and death moments. Jack gave them a small, reassuring smile. "I'll be right behind you," he whispered. He activated the emergency beacon, programming the Rustbird to automatically launch toward the nearest neutral station, a remote world that could take in the girls and protect them. They wouldn't understand the mechanics, but they would understand the result: safety. Jack gritted his teeth and took the Rustbird directly into the path of the pursuing slaver ship. It was a trap, yes, but one that might buy the girls the precious minutes they needed. Plasma fire lit up the hull as Jack twisted the controls, dodging and weaving as best he could. Sparks flew and alarms screamed. The Rustbird shuddered violently, systems failing one by one. "Almost there," Jack muttered, sweat and blood mixing on his forehead. He could hear the girls' quiet whimpers through the ship's thin walls. He pressed forward, ignoring the pain, ignoring exhaustion. All that mattered were their lives. Finally, the Rustbird reached the automated launch point. The girls' escape pod slid free, engines igniting with a soft roar. Lyra and Nira clung to each other as the pod shot toward the neutral station. Jack watched them go, tears blurring his vision. "Go," he whispered. "Be safe, live." The slaver ship turned its focus on the Rustbird again, but the pod was already gone. Jack took a deep breath, his body trembling. and activated the ship's emergency systems one last time. The Rustbird could not outrun them, but it could distract them long enough for the girls to escape. That was enough. Jack gritted his teeth as plasma fire tore through the hull. Sparks rained down. Smoke filled the cabin and his vision blurred. He thought of the twins, Lyra's hopeful eyes, Neera's trembling smile, and felt a strange calm wash over him. He had done what he had to do. He had given them a chance at life. The Rustbird groaned, flames spreading across the hull. Jack slumped in the cockpit, exhausted, bruised, and bleeding.